Yeah, the last thing I want is to be able to create like a honeypot target for hackers, North Koreans, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly been one of the biggest challenges that we need to make sure is all tied up, because just doesn't make any sense to have vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of like security things that we put into the actual protocol and all the contracts. So like even if somebody were to be able to hack the game, let's say that they were to figure out a way to be able to like rewrite their character data and have it to where like they ended up somehow generating 10,000 DLC and they tried to be able to withdraw it, it would be physically impossible because we have checks and balances outside of it when they try to be able to actually withdraw that looks at their timestamp, their amount of game time played, and a bunch of other things that go, okay, how many monsters did they kill? How many things did they do? Is it even physically possible within the even maximum arc for them to be able to have this much money to be able to withdraw? And if the answer is no, it automatically suspends the account. So we spent a lot of time on making sure to be able to just put in checks and balances and stuff like that.
Perfect.
Yes, sir. All right, well, we got enough people in here. We're gonna kick things off. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming, and obligatory thank you everybody for your patience. This has been a long ride here, so we're gonna just share some general progress and do this AMA, go over all the questions that were asked, and then we'll have kind of an open floor at the end. So, bit of good news that we wanted to kick things off with. So, for about the last 4 or 5 months here, we've been in a very long negotiation and legal process with a influencer agency. They're known as OneFluent. They have around 200 influencers directly signed to them that range from 1 million in following on the low end to over 15 million plus on the higher end. Some that you could go and look up: Crawford Collins, JC Kalen, are just some examples of some that are signed that have big followings and are also already in the space, with NFTs. So we finished that off. So we're doing another project with them that we'll be, discussing more as that launches. But the benefit for DashLeague is there's just going to be a lot of cross promotion and cohesion there. Our whole team is training all of their influencers on not just NFTs in general, but on, how these projects work and how they're going to help promote them. So that's going to be just a massive asset for this entire project just moving forward. So we wanted to share that with you. And with that, I will just dive into the questions here. So starting at the top, Redguard of Asher, will we be able to choose our class at the beginning of beta?
So we won't be able to have any classes in the very beginning of the beta. Right now, they're having it to where they're programming in the skills. And skills are going to take a little bit longer because it takes animation, then it takes being able to balance it with the current monsters and stuff like that. So skills are going to be disabled in the very beginning. You will be able to, however, choose your stats. And then what we're going to do when we announce the classes is that once we announce classes, we're going to allow for everybody to do a global reset of their actual character stats. So that way they can be able to build according to the character that they want to have.
All right, and that answered the skills question as well. Resetting and changing classes. I guess that's kind of, in the same vein there. Sorry, cut out at part of I just had to switch my internet here. Did you answer that last bit? Would it be possible to reset and change classes? Sorry, I didn't hear part of that.
You cannot reset classes once you end up choosing them. We might have it where like you pay some form of DLC in order to be able to reset it, but right now it's not a default functionality.
All right, and going down the list here, is it still decided to have soft content release with beta and release additional content as we move forward? The short answer is yes. If you want to elaborate on that more, Space.
Oh, 100%. It's going to be a rolling launch. There's a ton of things that are going to be coming out. So we just ended up getting back the entire script as well for the first episode, anime episode for DashLeague, believe it or not. So we have an anime that's in the process of being built. So that's going to end up playing into like your actual in-game experience. There's going to be some really interesting perks that are going to be coming along, some in-game events. that are going to allow for you to unlock special like episodes and stuff like that, and special cuts inside of the actual anime, which is going to be pretty sweet. Outside of that, we're also going to have it to where in the game, there's just going to be a ton of different events. So like all the major events that you can expect, like July 4th is going to be a big event. So for those of you that don't know, between July 8th and July 14th, I'm actually going to be jumping from space. I'm not going to go too much into detail about what that is. And you guys are going to find out a little bit later. But we're going to have a lot of like fresh content that's going to be relevant to events and different things like that that are going to end up popping in. We already did all of our Christmas stuff. We already did all of our Halloween stuff. We're kind of tackling the main events. But yeah, there's going to be tons of content that's going to be added pretty much probably every week, honestly. Every single week, you're going to get an update and be like, hey guys, XYZ dungeons have been added. These monsters have been added. These items have been added. This has been added. It's going to end up being really quick because once we have the foundational platform, adding content past that point is really plug and play. Then we standardize the process to make it really easy and streamlined for everybody.
Awesome. And then a couple questions around DLC. The first one asking, is DLC going to be, are DLC earnings going to be claimed once a day for renters and owners automatically, or will it be, a certain timing to that? I know we've had a lot of discussions about this internally. So, is there a time limit on that? I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, so when you initially end up doing the DLC bonds that are going to be available here soon, there's going to be a time lock period. We're currently deciding on how long that time lock period needs to be. That's for the initial bonds that you end up buying, any bonds at all, so that way people can't gamify the market. On top of that, any DLC earned from the game is going to be underneath a 7-day time lock. So that means that you won't be able to, if you make money inside of DashLeague, any DLC, you won't be able to withdraw it for 7 days. However, we have enabled the option to where after 24 hours, if you do want to withdraw it, there's going to be just a decreasing penalty. So let's say that you end up making 100 DLC and you immediately want to be able to withdraw it the next day. Well, there's going to be a penalty that decreases proportionally every single day. So if we're going to, let's say that we were doing 5 days instead of 7, just to make the math easy. So if you were to pull it out within 24 hours, you would end up facing an 80% tax because we want you to pull it out after the 5 days, right? If we're using a 5-day time lock, but ours is going to be 7. So that means that day 1, you're going to have an 80% penalty. Day 2, you're going to have a 60%. Day 3, you're going to have a 40%. Then day 4, you're going to have a 20. And then day 5, it's 0. So that allows for people to be able to be liquid if they deem it necessary to be able to do that. And then the DLC that's going to be taken as the fee is just going to get burnt. So as a result, that's going to end up increasing the actual token value. So one way or another, everybody in the community benefits.
All right. And just kind of trying to wrap similar subjects up as I'm just going through the questions again. Emerus had, do you still intend to have liquidity on Binance, or is it just AVAX? Is the team providing initial liquidity?
Yeah, so it's initially going to be on AVAX. We're going to have it to where we will eventually add Binance. Right now, it doesn't seem like there's an advantage for us to be able to do so by being able to have it to where we also put it on Binance. We have gotten offers from different networks to be able to put it on different networks. And believe it or not, the grants that we would get from those networks were actually going to fund our liquidity pool. As far as for the AVAX liquidity pool, we will be initially providing the initial liquidity. So what that amount is going to be depending on what we see as like first week's initial players. So if we end up seeing a massive rush of players and people buying up the remaining dashers that are available, we'll obviously increase the liquidity pool. We're probably going to start off with a fairly low number because I mean there's not that many people that are like waiting for the game to be able to come out that are going to be active. So it's probably going to end up being anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 is what we're going to supply for the initial liquidity pool. That also gives us time, and we'll increase it probably every 2 weeks. And the only reason why we're going to start so low is that when we look at the actual data and we actually see how much like DLC people are making, how much people are withdrawing, how much people are trading, etc., that's going to allow for us to be able to determine how big the liquidity pool is that we need to be able to supply. But for the very beginning, having that 50K, if something goes wrong, then that's the only thing that we're risking. I don't think anything will go wrong. We've been testing it literally for the last 2 weeks. We've tried a bunch of different scenarios to try to be able to break our contract, our game, trying to be able to figure out like, are the flags working? Yes, no, maybe so. And we've been able to really like pretty much bulletproof this thing. So we feel pretty confident. On addition to that, every single time that a DLC bond is purchased, a percentage of that actual bond actually goes towards being automatically added to the liquidity pool. So as people, a community starts to buy more and more of the actual DLC bonds, the liquidity pool will automatically increase. So one way or another, the liquidity pool will be taken care of, and you won't have to worry about there being too little money in the actual liquidity pool.
Does anybody have any questions they want to chime in with specifically on the DLC side of things before we move on? Okie doke. Next question, will PvP be available for parties against other parties or just 1v1?
So when you're in a party, you can be hostile towards anyone. So it wouldn't just be party versus party, it would be party versus anybody. So I mean, if the other group is in a party or if they're a solo player, I mean, it's gonna pretty much have the same game dynamics of any MMORPG.
Yeah, it's just open world PvP, right?
Yeah.
All right. Will there be an in-game marketplace, or will sales for items and dashers have to be done through something like OpenSea, for example?
So this is actually pretty interesting. So you can be able to trade with other people inside of the game. So that kind of takes care of most of the actual trading that you guys are going to need to be able to do. As far as buying dashers, yes, you can use OpenSea. However, we're actually going to discourage you from using OpenSea pretty soon here. And the only reason why is because we will have our own external marketplace. It won't launch with the beta, but the external marketplace will not be inside of the game. It'll actually be external to the game. And that'll allow for you to be able to see what dashers are up for rent, what percentages that you're put up for rent. And then on top of it, we're going to have it where you can be able to buy them as well. Now, as far as items go in the game, so we've done this 2 ways, and we're trying to be able to figure out what's going to be the best way. We're going to be experimental with this. So we have it where you can be able to mint an item from the game that you want to be able to sell on any marketplace, whether it be inside the game or whether it be on a third-party marketplace. So let's say that you have a legendary sword that you think that you can be able to sell as an NFT. You have to go and mint that item. It removes it from your game character, turns it into an NFT, and you can sell that on our internal marketplace, or you can be able to sell it on OpenSea or any other marketplace, because we're going to have it where there's going to be a bridge network for all NFTs, whether it be a dasher, whether it be an item, anything across the board. We're going to have it to where you can be able to trade pretty much on any network.
All right. The next question is, when you release the roadmap, will the features listed be linear to the map, or will you have an upvote system on things the community would like the devs to put together first? Examples, prop weapons, armor, new map, tile sets. I realize some of this is most likely going to be relative to the anime and core to the game. However, interacting with the community in such a mannerism might be a lot of fun and possibly profitable. So yeah, I can chime in on that one. Definitely agree. I like the upvote system. That will be something that we would look to implement more after the beta is out, and that we can just say, okay, like, here's all of the content that we're working on. What is most interesting to you as a community? What do you want us to prioritize first? But yeah, obviously the focus is just getting the core of the game put together so we can actually get beta out. But that is all still being worked on. We are going to overhaul the comms very soon here. Just getting the last of the back end stuff all kind of organized and detailed into a way that is easiest to communicate and easiest to update you with.
Yeah, and just to be able to add to that, there's 100% going to be an upvote system for the community. So if you guys want to be able to suggest a specific item or a specific thing or something else of that nature, we'll probably have it to where people can be able to vote on what that is. And we'll probably keep it to where it's something like small little fee, like something like, I don't know, 5 or 10 DLC, which is, I mean, it would be equivalent to 5 or 10 cents. Just so that way people aren't like making suggestions for things in the game that are silly. And it also allows for it to be able to have it to where people don't just like submit their idea and then have it to where they end up creating a bunch of fake wallets and then trying to be able to upvote their own idea. So we'll definitely end up having an upvote feature so that way people can be able to get more of what they want to be able to see in the game as a priority. But we'll also have our own list, as Jet ended up mentioning, of the things that we're working on that we think internally are going to make the most sense for the game.
Yes, sir. Okay. Next question says, how long do you think the main sale will last once beta is live? 2, 4, 6 months. Obviously, this is guessing. Do you have projections based on marketing plans? That's generally the question there. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it is hard to estimate those kind of time frames, and we're extra, we want to be really careful about doing that going forward. I mean, that's a fair estimate, but again, like, yeah, there's, especially with this OneFluent partnership, and that's all signed up and everything's done there. It's really just opened a lot of new doors on what we can do with influencer marketing and really get a lot of eyes on this once the beta is like fully out. It's just going to be a lot easier to really build on the community.
100%. And then one of the things that I want to touch on the prior question of whether or not there's going to be an upvote for features. So when the anime NFT ends up coming out, which is going to be pretty much around the corner once we get out the beta, when you end up, there's going to be a separate upvoting system for the anime for the people that own the anime NFT. And every single one of the anime NFTs is going to count as a kind of like a snapshot vote. So that way you guys can be able to actually choose what character falls in love with what like other character, what happens in the actual anime. If there needs to be like some weird plot twist, there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff that's going to happen in the actual anime, within reason, obviously. But it's going to allow for you guys to be able to actually have a really heavy say in like what happens in the actual DashLeague anime, which is then going to reflect in the game in different ways. So just want to be able to add that in there as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that personally. Okay, so when will we find out other playable races beyond humans, elves, and undead? It was hinted that there may be some rare races. Can you tell us what those are, or is it still secret?
Still secret, 100%. These are going to be like Easter eggs that you guys are going to be able to find. There's going to be just I'm gonna make it fun. I'm gonna make it to where there's just some really exciting twists and turns. And inside of the dungeons, I'm already going to tell you guys right now, if you want to write down anything, there's going to be Easter eggs in the dungeon. So if you're just killing monsters and just killing and kill the boss, and that's all you do, you're going to miss the Easter eggs. There's going to be specific hidden traps and things like that, or maybe even challenges, some blocks that you have to move around in order to be able to get to the Easter eggs that might unlock special things inside of the game. I'm just going to give you a hint right now. And I'm actually a little bit disappointed nobody actually found that actual Easter egg in the alpha, but in the beta, there's already quite a few Easter eggs.
Love it.
And I just want to clarify, there's one specific Easter egg that has to deal with making your character into a special race. So your character can actually change its race if you end up finding this one specific Easter egg.
That plays right into the next question, which was, will any character content be race locked, such as classes, items, quests?
Yeah, so classes, I would say we're going to have to probably end up writing in some form of DLC where it's like, okay, you chose your class, you want to be able to restart your character all from scratch. It's not fair for other people that have been gaming specifically in that class because obviously when you think about resale value of the characters, it's going to be who ended up being what class and actually ended up grinding with it, got it to that level in order to be able to say, hey, well, there's a level 100 assassin, or there's a level 100 necromancer, or things like that, right? So if we're going to allow for people to be able to redo their classes, there's going to have to be some form of a DLC fee to be able to reset. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be voted on by the community. As far as race locking, outside of very, very few events, races will 100% be locked in. So we have it to where there's this one specific Easter egg that will change your character only for the first person that finds it, or we might do it for like the first 5 people that find it. But that is like, we don't want to be able to have it to where people can be able to change their races because again, that also changes the value of the character. And again, we just want to be able to make sure that if you end up getting a specific race, that's what you get. There's going to be other ways where you can be able to like find specific items or things like that that might be able to influence what your children end up becoming. but we won't have it to where you can be able to change your existing character class, or sorry, your existing character race.
All right. And any plans for story quests or reputation-based quests or dailies, for example, maybe a login reward for running a certain dungeon or two in a day, maybe something that gives bonus or progress towards a unique item if you earn X amount of DLC each day?
Yeah, so there is definitely going to be login rewards. So we have it to where there's going to be a small bonus. We weren't actually going to tell anybody about this, but I guess might as well. So there's going to be a small bonus reward pretty much every single day that you end up logging in. So you're going to get a little bit higher XP, a little bit higher DLC as well every single time that you end up logging in. And then on top of it, the other thing that you're going to end up seeing is that during the first initial launch, there's going to be just a special like 30-day login bonus for everybody because you guys have been so patient. So for the people that are going to be playing during the first 30 days, you guys are going to be able to have access to a bunch of bonuses and stuff like that. The people that are going to be coming later are not going to be able to have access to.
Yep. Okay, next question's kind of repetitive about PvP. The one difference in it asking about will there be battlegrounds or arenas like PvP specific areas or mini games, anything like that?
So there is a mini game that we've already worked on that I think you guys are going to laugh at, but first you have to find it. And once you guys find it, everybody will know about it. It's very easy to be able to get to. But there is already a mini game inside of DashLeague. For those, I'll give you guys one hint. For those of you that have played Pegasus, you guys are going to see a very similar functionality, I guess you could say, to the mini game, except it's going to be a little bit more meta and it's going to be a lot funnier. And it actually is going to be skill based. So for those of you that are really great at button smashing, you guys are going to really enjoy the mini game. As far as other forms of mini games, I've already ended up figuring out that there's going to be some really cool stuff that we're going to do. So when it comes to League Wars, this isn't covered in the white paper, and this is something that I'll have to add to it because this is going to be a pretty big mini game that might actually become probably a core component to the DashLeague game. And long story short, because we've been building other games, we've been doing other logic, and we've been able to do some really cool things. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to allow for you guys to be able to have league wars. So this basically means that if you're in a league that has, let's say, 100 members in it, you can go up against another 100-member league, and there's going to be like a whole tournament and other different things where like maybe every single Friday there's league wars and there's like objectives and things like that to be able to capture. But what's cool is that it's going to teleport all 100 players on either side to the actual map, and it's just going to be a massive free-for-all. So where you guys can be able to basically kill each other until you end up capturing whatever it is that you need to capture, whether it's going to be capture the flag based, or it's going to end up being checkpoint based, where if you capture that checkpoint, it's going to give everybody in your guild an actual little plus in terms of stats or whatever it's going to end up being. And we'll be able to have it to where probably leagues are going to be able to wager things against each other. So for instance, a league would end up saying, oh, we're going to wager X amount of DLC against this as like the grand pot, and then everybody just basically contributes or something along those lines. So we're still figuring out how we're going to allow for leagues to be able to kind of compete for like a massive prize. And as far as the game mechanics go, we already ended up figuring out how to be able to do it. And believe it or not, this is one of the fun things that I just haven't even mentioned this to anybody. I would say about 80% of the league wars is already done because it's nothing too crazy. Like from a programming standpoint, when you really actually break it down, all it is teleporting you to a specific map and then having it to where it counts the number of players that are in that map from each guild or league. And then it ends up allowing for us to be able to have specific checkpoints where if your dasher is in that area for some time, then that allows for you to be able to claim that. And then that gives a bonus to all of the 100 people that are in that specific guild. So we're going to end up figuring out how to be able to create different forms of the league wars, whether it be capture the flag or whether it be last man standing or whether it be checkpoint based or whatever it ends up being, or like destroying the other person's base. We're going to end up experimenting with a couple of different ways, and we're going to allow for the community to vote. And it's going to be crazy fun. And then one of the other mini games, and this is pretty far out, so don't expect this to be able to happen in the near future. Once we allow for you guys to be able to make your own dungeons. So once we allow for you to be able to make your own dungeons, which will not be part of the beta, you will be able to then have it to where we can use the same assets that you're going to be using to be able to place monsters in your own dungeon. And we're actually planning on adding a tower defense version where basically you can be able to place your monsters as if they were towers to be able to protect your lane. And we're going to basically have it to where it's going to be a PvP tower defense game where we're going to be able to have it to where you can send mobs down the other person's lane. They can send mobs down your lane. And as you killed those mobs, you end up getting more deal gold or whatever it is, whatever the token is that we're going to do for the minigame. And that's going to allow for you to be able to add more towers or send more units down the other person's lane. So we're going to have a ton of little mini games inside of DashLeague. So it's going to be pretty robust. There's going to be like 3 or 4 games that are going to be inside of DashLeague, outside of the core build, which is going to be really fascinating. So those are just a little highlight of what's to be able to come in terms of like all the mini games and exciting developments that we kind of have been working on in the back end. And just to touch on where we are with dungeon building. So as you guys ended up seeing in the the alpha, if you ended up finding me in the actual game and you got too close, either I killed you or I ended up spawning a massive amount of mobs on you. But what was really fascinating is that if you ended up going back after killing that mob, well, the mob ended up respawning. And what's really great about that is that we ended up going, okay, well, that makes it really easy for us to be able to allow for you to be able to create your own maps. You can place your own monsters. You can be able to do that. However, placing your own tiles, we're still creating the actual interface for you guys to be able to place your own tiles and how we want to be able to allow for you to place your own tiles. Are we going to have it where you have to have a specific crystal and that governs how big your map can actually be? Do we want to be able to have it where you have to find the tiles for your actual game? Because we're going to have it where you have to find the monsters for your game, for your dungeon. So we've been figuring out the different game mechanics on that side, but I would say right now, if we allow for you to be able to make extremely rudimentary dungeons from scratch, we could launch that pretty quickly. Or we have another option which we can do really quickly, which is randomly generated dungeons. So every single time that somebody claims a dungeon, it automatically regenerates it through the AI. And then you are responsible for placing your monsters in it. And if we were to go that route, we could get that out pretty quickly and then follow it up later with being able to actually customize the tiles, the props, and different random things like traps and stuff like that in your actual map. It's just that right now, to be able to do it in an easy way to be able to do that for the user inside of WebGL, which is obviously what you guys are going to be playing through. It might run into a memory issue, and that's why we're a little bit concerned on that regard. But outside of that, I would say that we could be able to pretty much kick off the dungeon building pretty quickly. And we're looking at different options. So you're probably going to see dungeon building evolve in like 3 or 4 stages, where you're probably going to get randomly generated dungeons really quickly after you end up conquering a dungeon. And then you're going to be placing your monsters in it. And then after that, then you'll be able to not just place your monsters, but also be able to place traps and tiles. And then after that, then you're going to be able to have it where you can be able to go even further and add levels to your dungeons, such as stairs that'll end up taking you to the next level and the next level and the next level. So that way, the more difficult maps, you can be able to basically almost create your little universe inside of DashLeague, which will be really, really fun. So just want to be able to clarify and update on where map building is in DashLeague.
Right on. And thanks to Luxendal for all those previous questions there. And all right, and then we got Z Red Ping Redemption asking the heavy hitters, will there be a penguin?
There's currently not a penguin. However, we can be able to have it so that way, if you guys want to be able to like really have a penguin as a pet, we can be able to have it to where you guys can be able to vote on it as one of the first community votes, and we can be able to put a like actual penguin in the game. Additionally, on the topic of community votes, there is going to be a community vote for the basic burn mechanics of the entire game. Just from a legal standpoint, we actually have to have the community vote on the burn mechanics of the game. So that way we can say, well, we didn't set it, the community set it. And it's just like a great thing that we have to be able to do. So expect for there to be a community vote coming up, and your dashers will be your snapshot vote for the actual game mechanics before we can actually launch the game. So that's going to be coming up very, very quickly. So expect that in the next 2 weeks.
All right, we got toxicity with a couple questions. Basically about looking for an update of the GG partnership and kind of what went on there. And then that dovetails into just asking for kind of an update on any potential funding, any funding rounds or investors that we've been talking to, grants. I know we kind of went into that a little bit. Just kind of looking for a status update on anything on the funding side, and then just the GG partnership.
Yeah. So as far as the GG partnership goes, they ended up unwinding. So they basically ended up having it where they did a migration at my recommendation, believe it or not. And long story short, it looks like most of their community is gone, just because once they ended up getting the payout. So I presented a solution for them to be able to do a migration to be able to improve their actual tokenomics. And improve their actual chart. Then 2 other people ended up coming in and they ended up coming up with a modified version of my plan, which just basically gave everybody a massive payout. And that wasn't my original plan. And as a result, everybody took the payout and kind of just left the GG community. And as a result, their community size is shrunken from thousands of people down to maybe 200 people max active. As far as the game that we were building for them, we were still building it. It's actually almost done. And that's going to end up having a little update here soon. However, I don't know how that game that we built for them is going to be used at all. There's so much unknowns because of what ended up happening and their leadership and things like that. It's very, very confusing. They still want to be able to do a partnership with us, so they still want to be able to have it to where they are a gaming DAO. So I imagine that there's going to be a vote or something along those lines once they see that DashLeague and DLC is profitable. They're most likely going to end up making a pretty decent sized investment into actually getting some dashers for their community to be able to play. Outside of that, I can't be able to speak to pretty much anything else that's going to be happening on their side because I really don't have much of any influence on their end. Now, as far as investment, as far as grants, as far as any other money external to any minting that goes on for DashLeague, so we did qualify for a $1.5 million grant, and that was contingent on us reaching 30,000 weekly active users. So in order for us to be able to do that, we have to be able to have it where not only do we end up minting out all 20,000 dashers, but also have it where we end up incorporating breeding and some other different aspects in order to be able to have it where we're going to end up hitting that 30,000 mark. So the moment that we hit it, then we end up getting paid out that $1.5 million over the term of a year. And that'll end up getting used towards development. That'll get used towards adding to the liquidity pools, opening up new liquidity pools and stuff of that nature. When we think that we will be able to hit that 30,000 will genuinely depend on what the reaction to the beta is going to be. And if the tokenomics work the way that I've simulated it, that I've tested it for weeks now, if it works exactly or even close to what I've done, everybody's going to be crazy happy. There's really no way that I see, at least from the way that I've been able to structure the tokenomics here, that the token price goes down. So what will end up happening is that every single time that somebody ends up doing a transaction in the game, it burns a small amount of DLC. So if you were to be able to find some monster spoils, right? So if you were to be able to find like a sword or a fang or a flower from a monster, and you were to go sell it to an NPC, well, that NPC is going to give you a 25% discount, right, on whatever the thing is worth. So let's say that you bought a sword for 10 DLC from the actual NPC. When you go to sell it back, it's going to end up giving you whatever is 10%, or sorry, 10 DLC minus 25%. So you'll end up getting back basically 7 DLC because there won't be fractions to DLC inside of the game. It'll all be rounded down to the lowest number. And as a result, that 3 DLC is essentially getting burned. So that means that there's going to be less and less and less DLC as time goes on. And as a result, that's going to end up allowing for the token, the base price of the token, to continuously increase. And as a result, we're going to basically be, and this is going to be the first time ever in all of DeFi that there's going to be a perma-bull token. So by you guys being able to play the game, you're actually contributing to the actual perma-bull status of DashLeague and DLC. So that's going to allow for us to be very bullish instead of having it to where we're delusionary. So that's also why we ended up incorporating on the breeding side hardcore NFTs. So when your two dashers end up breeding, instead of having it to where we dilute by adding to the number of actual playable characters, there's going to be certain circumstances where your characters can actually die. Your children, not the original 20,000. And as a result, that's going to allow for us to be able to make sure that we don't absolutely dilute ourselves to the point where your dashes weren't worth anything, like you ended up seeing with Axie Infinity, that you saw with Pegasus, that you saw with crypto cars and a bunch of other different models. So I focused really heavily on the tokenomics, and as far as DLC, that'll always stay in a perma-bull status. As far as the DashLeague characters themselves, we will probably end up seeing dilution over time, but as long as there's a higher demand for players, we'll definitely be able to see that like we'll be able to maintain prices. One of the things that we are debating on before we end up launching is having it where there is a universal time increase to breeding dashers. So based on the total net number of dashers that are available versus what the current, like basically the current weekly active users is, or the monthly active users, or whatever we're going to do. We were thinking about having it to where instead of it being, let's say 5 days to be able to breed your dashers, if let's say that we have a 20, or let's say that we have 100,000 dashers, right? If we have a surplus, what I'm thinking is that there would be some universal number that would increase the amount of time that it would take and the fee it would take to be able to breed your dashers. So that way it de-incentivizes more and more dashers from being made. And that allows for us to be able to keep the value of dashers. So that way the actual revenue that you would make from playing the game, the earning that you can play from the game, is going to come from actually DLC, which can be easily controlled versus trying to be able to breed your NFTs and sell them off. So we're trying to be able to make sure that we can be able to really focus the tokenomics and encourage earning from DLC versus earning from breeding. Because if we end up incentivizing earning from breeding, which you saw with Pegasus and you saw with all of the other play to earn games, you saw exactly where they went. They ended up having it to where they generated so many, and they ended up having it to where they had so many different people playing it that the actual generation of their token was so great that it ended up causing it to where it just plummeted in value. Everything plummeted, whether it be their token or their NFT. If we take an example of Pegasus, I mean, just 2 months ago, each one of the horses that you had to be able to race was $1,000. And then now it's $20. I think it's actually maybe $15 because they allowed people to overbreed, which generated too much of their token. And as a result, ended up absolutely killing the value proposition for even people in the Philippines to play it. So there was no possibility for you to even be able to have scholars in the Philippines because it wasn't economically feasible for even them to play anymore. So with DashLeague, we're being very conservative of limiting the profit that you can make from breeding, whereas you're going to make significantly more profit from playing the game. So we're just trying to be able to make sure that the actual profit from our model is all DLC based. So I just want to be able to really clarify that and drive it home for everybody that's listening right now. So don't focus on breeding, focus on DLC, and you'll end up coming out on top.
Yeah, and as I'm sure everyone here can imagine, a lot of these tokenomics have certainly not at all been easy to figure out. I mean, we're really being intentional about studying really closely what other projects have missed or any issues that they've had, any vulnerabilities, any missteps. We truly are kind of trailblazing here in a way that, you know, we're building something that nobody's quite done yet. So I do want to make sure people understand that this isn't just another game. This is like a full-on MMO, and even just having the functionality where you need to be able to sell stuff back to the store. Just the simple things like that create a cascade of different things that need to be thought out and make sure that everything's in place. And then, you know, I would also say, don't get too hung up on in terms of like, you know, 30,000 active users, to be honest, like with the marketing ability, with influencers and just a lot of other stuff that we've just been sitting on and waiting until the beta is finally released. we're going to be getting a lot of eyes on this project, a lot of people jumping in the beta, and it's just going to be a whole different ball game at that point. We're just kind of keeping our heads down and making sure that everything's developed properly, because that's really all that matters. You know, we just want to deliver for you on the actual game, and the rest is going to be easy. So it's not like there's a lot of games out there competing with exactly the model that we're going with.
Yeah, and just to add to that, there is not a single game that has a permabull tokenomics. Permabull tokenomics, we are the trailblazer for it. There's not a single other game that has it where it's constantly decreasing as more and more people play the game. So the amount of supply of token is decreasing as they continue to play the game. They're all the opposite. They all have it where they end up increasing the amount of tokens, which decreases the value. And we're just going the opposite direction, which is going to be really great. On top of that, other advertising initiatives, we're definitely going to be doing paid ads. It's a no-brainer. We're definitely going to be doing paid ads. It's going to allow for us to be able to pick up a significant amount of people. On top of that, we're also going to be speaking at different events. We already have, I believe, 2 events already set up now to be able to speak about DashLeague, and the 2 major conferences, actually, one in London and then one that's in that Jet you ended up just landing, correct?
Yeah, Consensus 2022 will be there. We'll have press passes, and we'll be getting some unique access. We'll be doing a lot of networking and talking to several of the big speakers there. I'm going to be arranging interviews with, since I do work for Rolling Stone. I'm able to get access to them, and we'll be telling them about everything we're doing here too.
Yeah, and just to give a little bit of background for everybody that kind of doesn't know one of my prior businesses, we were one of the top spenders for Facebook, like as an agency. So we had, like, just to give you an example of one of our clients was spending about $400,000 a day with us, and that basically equates to roughly about $12 million a month. And then during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, during those months, we were spending, gosh, like $3-4 million a day for these clients. So as a result, we were personally invited by Mark Zuckerberg to be able to come out during the major mission change statement out of only 100 people, things of that nature. So I know marketing like the back of my hand when it comes to being able to do any form of paid media, whether it's TikTok, whether it's, guerrilla marketing such as direct mail, or being able to do Facebook, Instagram, virality studies. I even ended up creating weird hacks that you guys can do. And this is for anybody that has a business here. And this is a little bit fun little hack that you guys can use. Believe it or not, you can be able to route traffic from a paid network through Twitter. And you can have it to where, let's say that you want to be able to make a video on YouTube go viral, right? So YouTube is obviously owned by Google, and they use the same analytics platform to be able to detect when people use ads, so that way people can gamify their YouTube videos. So what's really fascinating is that you can actually take that YouTube video, you can go over to Twitter, you can paste that video twice, that link to the video on Twitter twice. The first time it turns into a short link, it embeds it. And the second time in the same tweet, it then turns into a short link, a t.co link, right? If you take that t.co link and you put it into a bunch of different advertising platforms, the traffic gets routed through Twitter. Twitter then pushes that over to YouTube. And as a result, YouTube sees that it came from Twitter as an organic link click, and it thinks that you're going viral on Twitter. And as a result, what ends up happening is that then it triggers its own internal virality and starts pushing you to the top of suggested videos for everybody else that watches any similar video, puts you in the right-hand sidebar, puts you at the top of alerts for people, even puts you in their newsletter. So it's a really easy hack that I definitely plan on doing with DashLeague, especially as we get influencers doing gameplay videos and stuff like that. We're going to take advantage of every single weapon in our arsenal that I've learned over the years of being able to, run a massive agency. So that's just kind of give you guys a little peace of mind that once we end up getting the beta out and we actually have the ability to be able to allow for people to earn, people are happy with it, it's bug free, or at least close enough to where people don't really get disgruntled by anything. We're going crazy when it comes to marketing, and we're going to basically throw everything at it, and we're going to make sure that this is going to be a really great project, not just for the near term, but for the long term.
Absolutely. All right, just last couple questions here, and then we'll open floor it for any final questions. Okay, it's kind of a joint question here. What's the final full list of gameplay mechanics and features that will be included at launch, and then any subsequent features to be added to beta and their priority? And then rough timelines. So this is what we're going to address with the whole communications overhaul. I mentioned that earlier, and we're going to lay out that roadmap that has more specifics, and then we'll build on that. And then the other question in that realm was how many people are actively working on the game. Space, I'll let you answer those.
Okay, so how many people are actively working on the game? So right now we have a game studio of roughly about 28 people. That includes the 3D team that's working on the other game right now, and we're actually expanding. We're hiring right now for 6 different positions, and we're going to be building yet another game pretty soon here. So this is not going to be like this is not just like, oh, you ended up minting something and it got sent to one guy and the guy's just like messing around. We have a full-on team. We have it to where we have 2 Web3 Unity developers, or Web3 developers that are versed in Unity, that are working alongside me to be able to make sure that our Web3 mechanics are proper. And the guys that are our Web3 devs have worked on major platforms, platforms that even some of you use, which is really, really great. We pay them an uncomfortably large amount of money to be able to work with us. And they're on full-time staff. So they're not just freelancers or anything else like that. Then we have a ton of Pixar artists that are working on everything from the actual players, the actual dashers that you guys are going to be seeing very, very soon here as you end up revealing it. And just to touch on that really quickly, when it comes to revealing your dashers, we ended up deciding that you're going to actually see them in game. So when you first log into DashLeague through your MetaMask, it's going to show all the different portals, and it's going to show a reveal button. And then when you click reveal, it's going to reveal your dasher. We're not going to have it to where we do a mass reveal. I think that's silly. The other thing that's really nice about doing it that way is that that's going to give you a significant value increase to your unrevealed dashers. So you don't know whether or not that you ended up getting a special race or something else like that. So for those of you that want to be able to potentially end up monetize on your unrevealed dashers, that's going to give you guys a really good opportunity as well. Outside of that, features wise, what's going to end up being inside of the game at very initial launch? You're going to be able to make money, obviously, or earn DLC tokens. You're going to be able to withdraw DLC, trade DLC. You're going to be able to trade with people. You're going to be able to party with people. You're going to be able to join leagues, although league functionality won't really have anything except for a league chat. Parties, you can be able to share experience and stuff like that. We are not going to initially launch with the scholarship program, and the reason why we don't want to initially launch with the scholarship program is because we want to be able to just make sure that the DLC mechanics plan out exactly how we think it will, and then we're most likely going to add it anywhere from, like, I don't know, 7 days later. It's going to be a very quick turnaround. We've already built out the entire scholarship functionality and everything else like that. It's just something that we want to be able to roll out a little bit after we do the initial beta release. There will be NPCs that you can buy and sell things. There's going to be some basic crafting. There will not be any skills or any classes initially. We're going to roll those out separately. I can be able to say that one of the classes that you guys will get to experience is going to be a necromancer. It is definitely one of the more fun classes. There's also going to be an assassin that lays traps. So for those of you that ended up ever playing Diablo 2, you'll probably see a very similar gameplay style there. There's also going to be obviously some of your basic classes and stuff like that that you can imagine, but the necromancer and assassin are going to be very, very fun classes. There's also going to be a druid class. This is not just going off of what we see in Diablo 2 when it comes to the druid class. There's going to be some very interesting gameplay for the druid. And the druid is also featured in the anime, so is the assassin. And obviously there's going to be some mage-based class. I'm not going to reveal what kind of class that is yet. Now, as far as other features, there will be pets. You will have to find your pets, although for those of you that are logging in the first 30 days and playing the game, you will find a special incentive for being in the first 30 days of when the game is released. So I'm not going to say what that is, and who knows, maybe we will add a penguin as a pet, because it doesn't take that long for our development team to be able to actually do that, so we can probably be able to add that towards the very end of it. But there already is a pet that we are giving you guys that I think you guys are going to like, and it might be a dinosaur, it might not be. And let's see, what other fun stuff have we baked in for you guys? Other features, there is the mini game that we've already built, which I referenced that it will be somewhat like Pegasus, that you guys will be able to race against each other. But I'm not going to say what you're racing, because it's going to be funny as hell. And I'm not going to say what the gameplay is going to be like, but it will be some form of a race, and it will be skill-based for those of you that love button smashing. I'm trying to be able to think of other features that will initially be released and then what's coming after. The external marketplace will not be released at the initial first week. That we're going to roll out. Again, a lot of these things that we plan on rolling out, such as classes and some of the skills and stuff like that, we're going to be rolling out probably classes towards the end of a 30-day period after the initial beta. We're going to be rolling out the marketplace, the scholarship program, and some of like the interesting game mechanics probably within the first 30 days. I mean, we pretty much have a lot of it already built out. We just want to wait and see and make sure that DLC is working the way that it needs to. And everybody here is probably like, well, why aren't the skills done? Why aren't the classes done? And I really need to speak to that because in a normal game, it wouldn't be a problem. Like we actually have it to where we've done a lot of animations. You'll actually see in the gameplay video that's going to be coming out here very shortly, one of the skills, and it's actually a really cool looking skill. And that's not the problem. The problem arises when you end up dealing with any kind of stat attribute modifiers. So to give you an idea, let's say that you have a specific skill or something else like that that increases your luck, which increases your item drop rate. Well, if it increases your item drop rate, that also means that it increases the amount of DLC that is being emitted from the game. So the emissions from the game are going to increase based on that one skill. And we have to be very cognizant of that. And we have to be able to go, okay, what does this actually end up doing? And we have to be able to actually go farther than going, oh, what will it do? And we actually have to put in trackers for it. So we have to be able to go, okay, how much more DLC was generated by players who have this skill activated? And then what we're doing on our end is that we're going to release the beta and we're going to be using the characters that we have on our side. So we have obviously the dashers that we ended up reserving and minting in the very beginning that are reserved for anywhere from influencer promotions to team testing to whatever we need. And we're going to be using those actual dashers and we're going to be enabling the skills for them to be able to see what realistically when we hire somebody to be able to play them, we're just going to hire some scholars to be able to play our dashers initially. And we're going to see how much DLC that some of these additional skills that affect luck and DLC drops or item drops or things of that nature, to see how much additional DLC that they drop, because we can't answer that. There's no way to be able to project how much they can actually be able to make. So we have to be very careful about how these skills are done. And then we also have to be very careful about when we end up releasing specific things. So for instance, like the Necromancer class. I personally love Necromancer classes, and this is what's going to be reflected in the game because I'm directing it, of having a massive mob of skeletons and stuff like that that you ended up seeing in Diablo 2. I think that was probably the coolest Necromancer class I've seen out of any game. So we're recreating the mob class Necromancer, and that's going to allow for you to have a huge mob. But we have to be able to balance it to where he's not too weak and not too strong, that he can just be able to take out everybody while not doing anything. We also are having it to where we have to be able to figure out different skills and how they interact with the actual environment. So an example, when we end up dealing with the assassin class, so when we were working with traps, right? Well, we have to be able to think that the average player, they're either going to be using the WASD to be able to move around, or they might be using the mouse. We have to be able to think about what that gameplay is going to be like. So when people end up doing the traps, we have to think, okay, well, is this going to end up being a trap that ends up pushing out some kind of flame in a triangle pattern, or is it going to be in a spark pattern, or is it going to end up being in all these different patterns? And we have to be able to figure out how to be able to balance this. So we're really doing a lot of work on making sure that the balancing when it comes to classes and skills doesn't just give one character just crazy OP skills, because then on top of us curating all these skills, how is that going to affect the rate at which players complete a dungeon? Because that's very, very important too. If the rate that a player can be able to kill monsters drastically increases, that increases the emissions from the actual game. So we have to be able to think about all of these different things when it comes to the game mechanics. That's why actually creating an MMORPG on the blockchain is so incredibly hard, especially when it's play to earn. So I really wanted to be able to kind of shine a light on that specific part of the problem. But to be able to go back to the original question, you will be able to earn DLC. You will be able to trade, party, kill other players. You will be able to have it where you play the mini game that we've programmed in there, and you'll be able to have it where you can explore a certain number of maps initially, and then we'll start expanding more and more. And we're going to have it to where in the very beginning, the beta, there's going to be a fixed amount of maps, and the maps that you can go to are going to be random. You won't have to find the runes to be able to go to new maps. It's just going to be pre-done for you. So that way we can be able to test out the DLC mechanics before we introduce runes. And runes are going to be your teleportation mechanic to basically find different maps. So runes, you need 3 runes to go to any map. So there's going to be fire runes, white, light, dark, water, earth, etc. They're going to have different levels, different markings, and that's going to control the infinite universe of unlimited dungeons that DashLeague will have. As a result, you're going to be finding them as drops as you go through other different dungeons. That allows for us to be able to have it to where there's always infinite gameplay, and you guys will be able to play to your heart's content. Now, one of the things that did end up coming up in one of the prior questions that I also want to be able to address, and something that we've been working on, is event-based, not necessarily quests, but more events in the actual DashLeague universe. So we're going to have specific dungeons, and especially when it comes to partnerships. So for instance, with GG and potentially some other different networks that we're talking to. So just to give a little bit of a background, we're also talking to Phantom right now, and we're specifically talking to Geist's network about potentially having it where there's going to be a specific dungeon that also drops Geist tokens inside the game. So you won't be just getting DLC, but you'll also be getting Geist tokens. And we're going to be doing a lot of partnerships in that sense too. So that's something very important for you guys to write down, that you're not just going to be getting DLC tokens when we do partnerships. You're also going to be able to get other NFT drops, whether that be if we do a partnership with, let's say, Bored Ape Yacht Club. If we were to be able to do a partnership with them, we could be able to actually drop an NFT, a rare NFT that's worth thousands of dollars as a consequence of going through a specific dungeon. Or we can have a specific dungeon that specifically drops their token instead of ours. We have a lot of flexibility that we built into this game, and I think you guys would be really, really excited. So we built that already. So when it comes to partnerships, as soon as we have a partnership that's worth doing, we'll build out a special dungeon, then you guys will be able to have that. So I hope that kind of answers and goes above answering that question to kind of give a huge scope of where a lot of the things are at, especially when it comes to the initial version that you guys are going to experience.
Awesome. All right, we got the last 2 questions here, and then we'll open floor it for any discussion, any other questions. This one here is asking just for more of the core team's backgrounds, if you want to speak to that on the dev side space. And then they also mentioned about you going to space and the underwater hotel, wondering if those were jokes. They are not.
Yeah. So first thing I'll touch on, yes, I am actually going to space. I've been working on this project since, gosh, it's been an aspiration of mine since I've been in 6th grade. And over the last 5 years, we've been basically working towards it. I actually have 2 inventions in the actual space field. I've spoken at SpaceCom. I've spoken at the Johnsonville Space Center in Houston. I love it. I've honestly been a huge advocate at the entire space arena. I actually invented something that you guys will end up seeing, that when I end up doing the space jump, I will be jumping from 140,000 feet, breaking 5 world records, personally skydiving from space. And outside of that, the platform is going to be coming down on its own, and then we will start taking people to space no more than probably 90 to 120 days later. For those of you that want to be able to actually go see what the actual Earth looks like from your own eyes, and you won't have to jump. So yes, that is 100% a real thing. There's going to be a lot more news about it once DashLeague ends up officially coming out. I guess I could be able to dox myself and show you guys exactly what I'm doing, so that way you guys can be able to see what the mission is, what I'm going to be doing, all the other fun stuff. As far as the underwater hotel. Now, for those of you that know about the underwater hotel that we're also building, I basically ended up hiring the lead architect who ended up winning the entire European architecture design competition out of all of Europe. And I came up with this innovative concept to be able to build an underwater hotel at a fraction of the cost, to be able to address a worldwide issue that most people don't even know about right now. And that issue is there's a lot of dead spots that are appearing in the ocean, and dead spots in the ocean are very concerning. And yet nobody's talking about it. The news isn't talking about it. They're still stuck on global warming. But dead spots basically mean that there is zero oxygen in the actual water. There's zero life in the water. All the fish are dead. There's no coral reef. Everything is just dead in those areas of the water. And that is largely caused by farming methods such as nitrogen runoff, artificial algae blooms. There's just so many different issues. So I ended up building an underwater hotel concept that basically is incredibly cheap, that can be prefabbed on land, that looks incredible. I can actually share it in the DashLeague chat for those of you that want to be able to see some of the mock-ups of it. And we're going to be actually NFTing it out. So we're going to actually allow for people to be able to buy an NFT, and that's going to be a fractional share to earn a percentage of whatever your suite owns. So every suite will have 100 NFTs, and you will be able to be entitled to a interior design royalty, which will be based on the amount of people that actually stay in your suite. And we figured out how to be able to make it so incredibly cheap that it is actually cheaper than any other underwater hotel that's ever been built. And it does not disrupt the sea floor as much as any other hotel does. And on top of it, we're going to be adding an artificial coral reef. So we're actually going to be rebuilding the ocean. And through what we've designed, we're also going to be pumping oxygen back into the water, being able to help with actual restoration. The first hotel is going in off the coast of Miami. We're actually buying an entire island that's been partially flooded. So we're actually doing pretty much everything kind of crazy. So space, we're doing an underwater hotel. And then as far as the team's background, I can speak to my personal background a little bit. I've sold 4 tech companies, 2 ecom companies, 2 tech companies. I currently own 6 different companies right now, and obviously the space company is one of them. And I mean, I'm a curious personality type. I love building things. I love being able to have it to where I can take on big challenges. I mean, I don't think anybody else would build an MMORPG that's play to earn and figuring out all the tokenomics and like actually enjoy it as much as I do. As far as the dev team's background, the dev team's background is pretty diverse. One of them has 15 years of experience. Another one was actually one of the art directors for, believe it or not, Dark Lineage 2, for those of you that have ever played that game. Then as far as the background of, and that's for the people that are working on DashLeague. We have other developers that are working on the other 3D games. Then as far as the Web3 developers, gosh, both of them have even probably more accolades than I do in the Web3 space, which is interesting. They built out entire dexes. They built out central exchanges. Gosh, these guys have done tons of very, very impressive accolades, and they're very quick at what they do. They're very great, and they're very good at responding to the very puzzling questions that I have to be able to ask them, because we're doing some things in tokenomics that have never been done before, that you guys will end up seeing once we end up releasing DashLeague. Outside of that, we have the experience of all the different artists that are on board. Our lead artist has been, gosh, he's been doing pixel art for, I think it was 12 years. So it was 12 years, and he has it to where he has a couple of game titles that have been released under his belt. And the other artists that are behind him, I mean, have anywhere from 4 to 8 years of experience. So these aren't like beginners. When it comes to pixel art, you can't really hire somebody who's in their first year at pixel art. You're just going to end up getting some really weird, wacky thing that doesn't really animate. So everybody that's on the team is very senior. The sound engineers, Jet helps a little bit with that, and then on top of that, we also have a dedicated sound engineer that's making all the sound effects and the background music for the game. And yeah, I mean, it's a fully built out team. I mean, everybody comes from different unique backgrounds. They're all experienced. They've all worked on other different game titles. They've all done pretty much their entire lives in this space, which is really, really great. So that's the background, at least, that I can be able to speak to on the dev art and my personal background. And then Jet, if you want to be able to talk about you, Harry, and some of the other team members.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just personally, I've been in the crypto space since 2017. I originally got my degrees in cybersecurity. I was certified to go work with the NSA, decided I didn't want to do that. As a singer-songwriter, I started getting a lot of accolades and just, growing a good fan base. This was back in like 2013. And really from there, that inspired me to move out to LA. I got a couple major label offers, and they are as bad as everyone says. So I, didn't feel it was in my interest. So ended up going on to found a company known as Pennyfly Entertainment. So we're a by artists for artists record label platform. We do a lot in the music industry and just entertainment in general. We have projects ranging from developing new promising artists all the way to artists with millions in following. There's a couple celebrities involved in a few projects we have, like Slash and Fergie and Journey. So a lot of what I've brought is just relationships and connections in the industry, and then I do a lot on the marketing side as well. And then we have crypto vet Dr. Harry Malinsky. You can actually see all of our bios if you go to pennyflyentertainment.com and go to the team, and you'll see several of the people that are involved in DashLeague listed on there. And yeah, so crypto vet, he's gone from managing over 10 million in assets, doing with a private security company that he was running, and went on to become a veterinarian. Did that for a couple years and retired, and just went full degen into crypto. So he helps us a lot with just the general outreach side, and even just with getting us visibility. Like, he's a frequent guest on a lot of the different podcasts like Crypto Jebb, Wendy O, BitBoy. So he's plugged DashLeague and a couple other projects that we're doing throughout that realm. But yeah, a lot of diverse backgrounds here. And yeah, that kind of ties up things nicely to the last question here, which is what inspired the team to start DashLeague? What are any core concepts that you want the game to capture? I'll let you take the lead on that.
Well, here's the real reason why DashLeague was built, and it was from a business aspect. So I ended up looking at all the games that were on the App Store for both Apple and iPhone, and also for Windows. And there was not a single game, not a single one that I could find that allowed for you to be able to build your own dungeons and let other people play them. It was crazy. There's the closest one that I could find was oh gosh, what is that game called? It's called I think it's called Monolith or something. And it looks cool from a 3D game standpoint, but it doesn't have any reward base. Like, you can create your like little tiny dungeon, you can play some monsters, but you don't get anything. And I was like, well, we can create something better. We can create something that is like a merge of Minecraft, in the sense of allowing for you to be able to build your own dungeons, and soon we'll be able to allow for you to be able to build more than your own dungeons. This is just where we're starting. But I wanted to create something where people had the agency of being able to create their own game, essentially, within the DashLeague universe. And that's what I wanted to be able to do. And then I looked at all the other types of games that are out there currently on the mobile phone market, and I ended up seeing that when it comes to tower defense, all of them are the exact same. When it comes to most gameplay, it's all the exact same. It's like they all just ripped off each other because they weren't being original. So DashLeague, I wanted to make completely original and have it to where it was just from the ground up something very unique gameplay, having it to where we could really be able to press the letter of what was possible in an MMORPG game. And I really wanted to center it around the ability to be able to create your own things. So that's basically what ended up inspiring DashLeague initially. And then why it became on the blockchain is because, well, putting it on the blockchain just made it more attractive. It made it more interesting. The fact that people who are wanting to be able to escape from whatever's going on in their life typically turn to video games. And as a result, that's always been seen as something that's negative, right? And it's only in the last couple of years that it started to be able to change. It started to be able to have it to where, as you ended up playing video games, now you can be able to play in esports competitions and things like that. But still, unless you're in the esports competition, you're really losing money. You're just blowing money and time away playing these video games. So what I wanted to do with DashLeague is I wanted to be able to figure out how could I tweak the tokenomics inside of the cryptocurrency, I guess, universe to such a degree that people could actually be able to be rewarded for de-stressing themselves by being able to have it to where they could escape and could play a game and could enjoy themselves without losing money or time or things of that nature to where it would actually penalize them in life. I wanted to be able to allow for it so that way the tokenomics of when you play Dash League will allow for you to be able to buy that fancy thing for your wife, that will allow for you to be able to take that family vacation, that will allow for you to be able to get the things that you do want to be able to get in real life. And I had to spend a ton of time balancing out the tokenomics for Dash League in order to get it to this point. And I'm pretty confident that I think I've gotten it to that point where you can make a pretty significant income from Dash League. And I can't really speak to the exact amounts and things of that nature just from a legal standpoint, but I really, really wanted to be able to focus on those two core elements. I wanted to be able to create something that allowed for people to be able to create their own dungeons and allow for their friends to play it. And I wanted to allow for us to be able to eventually get to the point where you could create your own worlds and also allow for you to create your own mini games inside of the Dash League universe. And then on top of that, I also wanted to be able to have it to where I could create a system, a framework, so that way people who wanted to play games and make money and enjoy their lives and be able to actually advance it while turning that time spent from a deficit into a positive. So something that actually ended up turning into an asset that everybody could appreciate, and that way it wouldn't be a deficit in their lives. And those are the two really core principles that I ended up creating Dash League around because I really wanted to emphasize those two things. So that's why it's taken so much time to be able to really focus in and dial in on the tokenomics because I wanted to make it worth everybody's while. And I wanted to be able to make sure it was secure and I wanted to make sure that it was fun. So those are the three things that we're really aiming for with Dash League. And I hope that you guys really enjoy that because that's really what I'm aiming for.
Hell yeah, man. Love it. Well, yeah, that is all of the questions we had pre-written. I see there's a couple more that there's some more chatter going on in the AMA questions channel. Oh, and yeah, I did mention I'd show the music here so you can see a little bit that no one's heard yet. I'll share my screen. Just give a second for people to bring that up. So what you're gonna see here rather, is this ending piece. It's kind of the climax of the song. That's part of the clip that you're hearing on the NFTs. So in between that, just been building out the really the whole build up to the main part of the theme. So it's not done yet. There's kind of a bridge build up part that's missing. So I'm just gonna play the intro through, and then I'm just gonna skip to kind of the ending part. So it'll be a little awkward, but you'll get the concept.
It's a little bit too quiet.
It's gonna build into this.
I don't think we can hear anything.
Well, Discord does not like me doing that. Sorry if that sounded all weird. I will MP3 that and just share it in the chat. But anyways, all right, can people still hear me okay, or that completely?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, cool. All right, so let me just pull up some of these other questions. While I do that, is there anyone? I mean, we could just open floor it here. Maybe that's easiest. Anyone who typed a question, if you just want to go ahead and ask, we'll just do 15 more minutes and wrap it up. I know some of y'all got some questions.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Do you guys ever see any like third-party applications being built on top of DashLeague in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see people creating third-party applications. The fact that it's on the blockchain to begin with, I could definitely see people creating third-party marketplaces, creating stat trackers, creating things that enable for people to be able to do things extraneous to the game. I definitely see that as an opportunity for a lot of people to be able to do. As far as opening it up to allow for people to be able to create things that interface with the game, that's something that I think it would be really fascinating to allow for people to submit their own art and do that kind of thing. But the thing is that that also could run into some copyright issues. I could see that running into just people ripping off the wrong assets and stuff like that. So I've been trying to be able to figure out a framework to allow for people to be able to build upon what we're doing game wise and mini game wise inside of Dash League. And I'm still trying to come up with some really good angles and ideas. But I definitely think that when it comes to like guilds and stuff like that, and those that like gamer guilds, not the leagues inside of Dash League, we will have tools and stuff for them to be able to see how much that they're making across all their different scholars. And we're going to figure out some interesting incentives, and we're going to figure out how to really be able to make it more engaging for the community. So we're going to start adding in, like, for instance, like a glossary index, so that we can see all like the items and all the monsters and things like that that have been discovered by your character. And we might do like a global discovery, because we don't want to show you all the items. We want to obviously have it to where like only the ones that have been found have been like that will show. Because there's going to be a ton of hidden Easter eggs and stuff like that that we don't want to be able to give away if we do a total glossary of all the items, or a bestiary of all the monsters, because some monsters might actually be part of an Easter egg. So just yeah, we're gonna open it up quite a bit. It's just one of those things that's going to be a rollout, just like everything else.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, just because like I know games like RuneScape or WoW or whatever will have like other like even launchers or whatever, like people will make a new launcher for it, and like it will have like updated stats or whatever. It'll just have updated information on the actual screen, making either quests easier or being able to track money. But it sounds like a lot of that's going to be built maybe on top of the platform already, so maybe it won't, like maybe something like that specifically won't be built. But yeah, I mean yeah, just like you were saying, just because it's on blockchain, it's like unlimited potential. So like having, I don't know, like an application process where maybe someone could become like an approved vendor or something, just so like everything's matching up and like not copyrighted and all that. But yeah, cool.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, here's the downside about blockchain. So imagine that we approve a vendor, and we say that, yeah, this vendor is totally okay. You can interface with their marketplace or something else like that. And then let's say that they decide to rug pull, or do something scammy where like you connect your wallet and all of a sudden you lose all your NFTs and all your funds. That can happen. And even if they're approved, the thing is, when it comes to blockchain, even I think it's like 6 or 7 lines of code to be able to do that. So the thing is, that can be updated at any point on any platform that you have your wallet connected to, which is always good practice to disconnect your wallet from everything, just in case they get hacked and somebody adds that. But that's what I'm most worried about with approved vendors. So that's where I'm going to have to figure out a happy medium. I think what'll end up happening honestly, is we're going to have to figure out some limit or constant qualification process, or a um, what do we call it? It will probably have to be able to have it to where we attach, if we do an approved vendor, it would have to be under the requirement of them having a GitHub that is shared with us that can only be pushed if our team says it's okay. Which is going to be a little bit hard to be able to incorporate, because we would have to be able to create an entire security network on top of that, to prevent those types of changes from happening. If it were any other scenario, any other business model, any other thing of that nature, except for blockchain, it would have been so much easier. But because it's blockchain, and because how sensitive it is, and you don't know whose wallet's connecting what and how many assets that they have, and it's hard to be able to approve somebody when there's just so much opportunity and there's so little security, to pretty much every single wallet that exists in crypto. So I really wish that there was better security, but until we develop that, I don't know if we're going to be able to have approved vendors, at least for the foreseeable future.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I just have one more quick, easy question. Like, um, are classes assigned to the dasher? Like, when I reveal my dasher, will it only ever be able to be an archer, or a paladin, or whatever? Or will I be able to like upgrade my class, or maybe dual class, or things of that nature?
So I'm probably going to have it to where there's going to be like a minimum level that you're going to have to hit before you can choose your class. Um, that's what I think we're going to do with the game mechanics. That's kind of taking a little bit after Ragnarok, if that makes sense. So you know how Ragnarok had like the guilds and stuff like that, like the
Yeah.
Assassin's Guild, and you had to go do some quests for them before you could be considered an assassin class. Um, we might go that direction. I'm still trying to figure out what's the best way to do it, in terms of how to initially do it. I do not think it's a good idea to just fix it into the initial NFT when it's initially created. Um, it just doesn't sound like a good idea. Um, I think having the opportunity for people to be able to choose it would be great, but it does create some interesting element, and it does create an incentive to breed, um, if we were to fix it from level one. So if we were to say, hey, your dasher's just born into this class, you have an archer, you have a necromancer, you have this. If we were to do that, um, it would make it more interesting, because then let's say that you have 3 NFTs and you have two mages and I don't know, a paladin or something else like that, right? You would want to get rid of one of your mages and maybe pick up a necromancer or an assassin or something else like that. So I think what might happen is, instead of me deciding this one, I think what I might do is I might turn it to a community vote and let you guys decide how you guys want the classes to be done. If you want it like a Ragnarok system where you can be able to choose your own, or do you want it to be able to have it to where it's automatically chosen from the very get-go? And the reason why I would do that is simply on the basis of, um, for those of you who are looking at this not as just a game, but a profit making venture, um, the second one would be the best. Like if I were to do it from level one, it just seems like it would be the best, because then it increases the rarity of those specific classes. It increases the incentive to breed, which increases the amount of burn DLC, which then increases, the value of specific NFTs over others, and also it just makes it a lot more fun. There's a lot more transactions, which then gives our team even more money, which then allows for us to create more content. So there's a lot of pros and cons to different ways of being able to reveal the classes, if that makes sense.
Have you ever thought of, or like maybe it's totally not possible with the current code or whatever, but with a dual class system, like maybe you start off with one and then like that's your base class, and then you could either create a cool quest line for, like, if you wanted to become an assassin, you'd have to do this crazy quest line and then have to pay some, probably some a decent amount in DLC to be able to get the new class or whatever. um is that even possible within the system, or is it kind of like you either are or aren't an archer or major or whatnot?
Yeah, so the way that Dash League is based is that obviously you level up to level 100 and then you can transcend to something else and you get a fixed number of skill points um, per every single level. If we were to think about including dual classes, we would have to be able to rewrite the way that the class systems are done. Because we've already done it. We've already done the class system. We've already done the skill trees and how that all functions. We would have to rewrite it. And I also think that in terms of balancing out the game mechanics, it might be pretty hard. So let's say that you were a necromancer and an assassin, right? So if you were able to lay traps and have like a mob of skeletons, um, pretty much would make you the hardest character in the entire game to be able to beat. Like you can't really beat that.
No, no. I mean, within the system, you would have to probably choose one or the other, like to go into, a dungeon or whatever. But I mean, if you had to rewrite the whole code, it's obviously not worth it at all. I was just, brainstorming whatever.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm just thinking about how dual classes would be able to work. We would have to create limitations of what classes could be dual classed. And I just think it would just add a lot of confusion. And it would just be easier to just keep it simple for everybody and just have the single class method. At least for right now. I mean, we can always look at it as an expansion later. I think for right now, I think keeping it the way that it is a good idea. And also, what might be interesting and something that we might look into a little bit down the line is introducing race-specific classes. And that would also increase the rarity of having a specific race over another one, which I think people will get really excited about.
Yeah, that's a
And
big deal.
yeah, and I think that's going to be a huge thing because that'll also increase the value of the NFTs and stuff like that, and also then would further increase the rarity of if we were to not have NFTs be able to choose what class that they are, that would be very attractive because then you would have it where let's say that we had I'm just gonna throw out I don't know let's just say I don't know let's say a Trent, right? So we have a Trent in the game like a tree monster. Let's say that's a race, and it's not. So I'm just telling you it's not. But let's say that it is. If we had three classes for it, one like a dryad class, another one that's like I don't know, a
Druid.
yeah, it could be maybe like a spirit summoner class or something else like that, right? Well, a human can never be those things, and that would then make it to where even though that specific I guess you could say that Trent class is only making up 0.1% of the dashers. To be able to have the specific race and class that you want would then be 0.1% of 0.1%, and that would make it incredibly valuable. So that if you were breeding your characters, and then all of a sudden your two human characters, you ended up getting a Trent class, you'd be like, what the crap? How the hell does that work? Um, Obviously that's not going to happen, but to be able to allow for that to be able to happen would be interesting. So you'd have to get two Trents, then breed, and then you might get the specific class that you want, which is that would actually be really cool, to be honest. I think we might actually do that to where we have it to where your classes are automatically assigned to the NFTs, because one, that would make it easier for programming wise, and two, that would actually incentivize doing a bunch of different things. So like think about it from like a quest standpoint, right? So if we have the current Easter egg right now that can give you can transform your character into a special class, or sorry, a special race. And then if we were to have special classes for the races, then if you wanted to unlock that class, let's say that there were, I don't know, four or let's say 10 NFTs that were transformed into this special class, and this special race, and there was three classes that you could be of this specific race. Well, you would have to have two NFTs and then breed them to potentially unlock that special rare class. And that would give it infinitely more value, and it would also constantly unlock new gameplay for everybody that's interested in continuing to play Dash League. I think that's what we might do actually, the more that I think about it. I think that just sounds like a really fun game mechanic. And it also ends up increasing the liquidity and also the amount of trade volume for everybody that's involved in Dash League from a monetary standpoint. So what do you guys all think about that? Since everybody's on here, you guys can all be able to like flash your mics if you guys think that's a good idea. Okay, so I see quite a few that are flashing. So yeah, that's really, really cool. Anyway, does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. I was wondering, I don't know if you ever played Lineage, but I know Tyler did, or Jet. So anyway, the question is more in regard of like weapons and armor. So there was a way in Lineage where you could find scrolls that were rare, and you could use those scrolls to enchant your gear, basically. So you say you'd have this super rare weapon to begin with that was +0. That's how it begins. You could safely enchant it to +4, and then like with every enchant, it went up, and the what do you say, the success rate became harder and harder the further up you go. So you could go to an unlimited enchant rate, and it would actually visually show the progress of like how epic the weapon became when you enchanted it. So the question is more in regard to like how do you think that's a system that could be implemented into DashLeague? I know I discussed it with Jet before. I don't know
It's
if the
already done.
NFTs. Oh, it's already done.
Yeah, we already have crafting.
Okay, in that way as well with enchanting.
Yep, so you can craft
Okay.
weapons, you can craft unique things, you can combine monster drops to be able to equal met weapons and stuff like that. One of the things that we really want to focus on in DashLeague 2, and this is going to be coming out a little bit later, is we're going to allow for merchants in the game. So there won't just be NPCs selling stuff, you can actually have a merchant class and be able to have the merchant be able to set up a store. So we want to be able to create it to where there is a huge opportunity to allow for all different types of gameplay. So in order to be able to do that, we had to allow for crafting, and we had to allow for you to be able to upgrade weapons, so that way if you were a merchant, that you could be able to sell unique wares that nobody else had, if that made sense.
And how is the upgrading works? Like, is it scrolls? Is it crafting like you described? Like, how do you upgrade a weapon?
Yeah, so it's going to end up being based on the crafting system, which you guys will end up seeing once you end up playing the game. When it comes to being able to upgrade weapons, it's going to be item-based required. So, for instance, let's say that you have a wooden dagger, right? Well, how would you upgrade it? Well, if you had a scroll, then it would mean that you would have just used some magic scroll and potentially upgrade it. Instead, we have it to where it's item-based. So you would have to be able to go find a specific enchanted branch or something else like that to upgrade your wooden dagger. Now, if it's a shield, you might have to be able to go kill a rock golem in order to be able to get iron ore or things of that nature. So it'll make it to where it incentivizes killing monsters. And the reason why we did that versus like a basic scroll system is because you got to remember, part of DashLeague, in terms of like their earning potential, once we enable for you to claim a dungeon, we have to also incentivize people to play your dungeon. So in order to be able to do that, we can't have it to where it's just scrolls. We have to have it to where there's maybe only monsters that are in your dungeon that people can find. Like, let's say that there's a specific monster that gives a specific drop for a specific common item that everybody wants. Well, it can only be found in your dungeon. Well, that makes that dungeon incredibly valuable, even if it's a low-level dungeon, right? So we really had to think about a lot of game mechanics that go into play with this. So that's why we added to where the crafting method was based around that. Also because we wanted to do the merchant class.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Another thing that maybe was very clear to everyone, but that I don't know, is are weapons and stuff going to be NFTs on their own?
So I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the AMA, but you can be able to mint any weapon, and it will take it out of your character's inventory and turn it into an NFT. You're going to have to pay the mint fee, which is going to be on AVAX. So obviously that cost is going to be very small, but the thing is you're still going to have to mint it. So this will kind of disencourage people from minting weapons that are low value, if that makes sense. That's why the merchant class in game makes so much more sense.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I was wondering because, in a sense, if you would have, for example, a +20 weapon, it would make like a lot of sense to have it as an NFT. And also a question in regard to the enchanting, like, is it also gonna like break the actual NFT? Like, is it gonna remove the NFT if it breaks? Is it gonna be as hardcore as Lineage was?
I don't know if that's how we have it currently, but yeah, that was a pretty badass feature. I remember when we were playing that. So yeah, like the short version is, you enchant the weapon at +4, it starts glowing. At +5, it glows more and more and more. And obviously the stats increase, but each time you use an item to enchant the weapon in Lineage, like as you were saying, the success rate goes down. But the thing is if you failed, it literally destroyed your weapon. Like you were left with some crystals that got you a little bit of value, but like you could completely blow up your weapon doing that. I don't believe that's how it is currently, but I'm all for that if that's able to be done.
Yeah,
I feel
so
like it would really make NFTs valuable. Like you could have this crazy valuable NFT that you couldn't make any other way by your own. Like you're the only person that can make it in the end.
Yeah, so we currently have it where it actually does break. So there is a success percentage of upgrading or crafting anything, whether it be upgrading a weapon or crafting an item. That is how it is currently programmed. Now, as far as do your weapons glow and stuff like that, you know, if this were a 3D game, that would be incredibly easy to do. The unfortunate reality is that because it is a 2D game, in order for us to be able to do that for every single weapon, because it's 2D, right? We would have to literally have every artist be able to create a separate sprite sheet for every level of that upgrade for that specific weapon, which would just become insanely costly. The only way that we could then get around it is if we were to do a particle effect inside of the game, kind of like a contour particle effect. And the only way to then do that is to then pay a significant amount more for servers, because the thing is that you now have it where not only do you have the players, right, which have to be synced to all of each other, but now you have all these particle effects from their actual weapons that now need to all be synced to each other, because particle effects are very, well, one, they're graphic heavy, and two, they're also, in terms of bandwidth, it's also really hard on the bandwidth to be able to communicate that across the network. So it's catch-22. We're gonna have to be able to figure out how to be able to do some form of a glowing effect on weapons outside of what we've done. We don't have it to where things glow right now when they get +1 or +2 or +3. The frame changes in the game. So every item has a frame. So that way it's very easy to look at your inventory, see what's rare, what's not, what's part of a set, what's not. Yeah, we don't currently have it where things glow unless they were initially created to glow in the game. So you don't have like a sword that you can upgrade and then all of a sudden it starts glowing. You would have to find an initial like special sword that's maybe a rare sword that automatically is glowing. That's just the downside and the drawback of a 2D game versus a 3D game.
Being a game developer myself, I hear what you're saying, but I also think it's very possible to do. I've done it in a 2D game as well. It's not an MMO, so network-wise it could be different. But there's very easy ways to implement a particle system, and then you just put it through a very low-res viewport, which basically forces it to become pixels. And in the end, you end up with a pixelated particle effect. And for the network thing, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I think you could possibly do it in a sense where it's just, if you already have all the information and the stats about the weapon, it could just be locally on each client that this weapon is plus this, and then you show a particle effect around it. I think it would add a lot of value to the visuals of the NFT, which is a big part of this.
Yeah, so when we ended up looking into being able to do specific types of things, like one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to have real world weather. So that way, as you're playing the game, you would end up seeing clouds above. You would have it to where when it rained, it would actually change some of the actual tiles in the game, which actually we are going to do. It's just not done yet. But we ran into memory issues. So when you do the particle effects, you add into the memory issues because it's inside of WebGL. And that's one of the things that you have to be very good about collection and being able to make sure that you can balance that out. So the team's still looking into that. It's just not on the top of the priority. So it can be done. It's just a matter of balancing, okay, what is the cost of doing that versus doing some of the other things that we want to do? And then in terms of priority, is that going to be the thing that we want to focus on versus others? But I don't disagree that it can be done. I just think that in terms of priority, I think that's going to be something that will have to definitely be looked at later. Because we definitely, when we initially looked at adding like specific things, like how I told you, like the world effects, we ran into memory issues. So like having it to where you end up syncing the rain, you have to be able to save that on the actual user side, right? There's just a lot of networking things that make it a little bit harder. And the reason why it's harder is not because of the server usage, but necessarily what is capped in terms of WebGL. And that's one of the things that we had to be very careful about.
Yeah, no, sounds good. Thanks for the replies. Really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great questions, everybody.
just real quick. I know you guys want to wrap this up, but will there be an auction house? And if there's not, will like a merchant class be able to like set something out for sale, even if they're like not logged in? Does a player have to be logged in as a merchant to like offer sales?
No, so that's going to be the interesting thing. So everybody's going to want to honestly find an NFT that is a merchant class. Merchant class is going to be a very common class, especially if we decide to be able to give it away as from a level 1 standpoint. So when we were defining what the merchant is, because that was obviously on the website from the very beginning, we're going to have to make it very common, and you're going to be able to set up a store and walk away. The level of your merchant is going to be able to define how many items that you can sell, what level of items that you can be able to sell, so that way you obviously have to play your merchant. Yeah, we're going to allow for you to be able to set up the stores and be able to walk away, and your player will still be able to be there if it is a merchant class. Because we're going to have it where there's going to be slots essentially inside of the game that you essentially claim or buy, or we're going to figure out something for the actual merchant class where you can just set it and forget it. And that's going to be a huge game mechanic, because that way it just makes a lot of sense. And that way between your NFTs, we're thinking about doing something like a shared, what do you call it? Like a shared like chest or something of that nature, or a shared inventory box, that you can be able to have it to where you can deposit stuff into that will then be able to be withdrawn by any of your characters without having to go and mint it and then distribute it to the character and then putting it into the other one. We're going to figure out how we're going to do that. Right now, it isn't finished. But right now, as far as the merchant goes, that was the plan, to be able to have it to where people could set it and forget it. We're planning on doing that with a few other features inside the game. But that was one of the passive income means that we were looking at. Just the same way that, like, when you end up claiming a dungeon, you don't have to be logged on for you to be able to make money through your dungeon. That's a really good question. That's one of the things that we're still kind of figuring out, kind of what the game mechanic's going to be for that, and then what are going to be the programming restrictions, limitations, etc. of that. But yeah, merchant classes are going to have like their own utility, which is going to be interesting.
It's super cool. And just so I understand it correctly, you will need, like, I'm assuming it's like a plot of land, like you said, a space within the game. Like there's going to be like a merchant area, I assume, or like a
Yeah, there's going to be like a town square.
Multiple towns, or is there just like one base town and then the rest of the game is basically like a little bit of open world and then dungeons?
Yeah, so there's actually going to be multiple towns. When the beta initially launches, there's just going to be the one town. And then what's going to end up happening is that there's going to be different towns that you can gain access to after you end up clearing like a specific dungeon. And then that'll allow for you to go to the second town or wherever you're going to be able to go. So there's going to be multiple towns throughout the entire game. It's going to be a pretty expansive universe. One thing that's going to be really interesting, if you've ever played the game .hack, you're only going to be able to access specific dungeons through specific towns. So the thing is, that allows for us to be able to get more utility out of the same runes, and that's going to allow for people to want to be able to go to the different towns to be able to do it. We're not going to have tons of towns, but we're going to have it where there's probably going to be like anywhere from like maybe 4 to 5. Probably starting off with like 1, then eventually going to 3, then eventually going to 5, and probably capping it at 5. It really depends on how much people like DashLeague. If people go crazy and it blows up and it becomes multi-million person game, then it'll probably change. We'll have to change a lot of things. But for right now, I think it should be fine.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Cool. I appreciate it.
I've got a couple quick questions I'd like to fire off.
Go for it.
Will friendly fire be a thing if you're in the same party, both for PvP and PvE?
No. So friendly fire, if you are in a party, you can't attack anybody in your party. That's already programmed into it.
Awesome. Okay. And then you talked a little bit about the professions. Are you guys, can you give like an idea for your timeline on professions? Will any be live at beta, and what's like the expectation for that?
Yeah, so we already ended up mentioning that the classes will not be released at beta. They're going to be rolled out probably 30 days after. just because we have to do a lot of balancing, and we also have to be able to take a closer look at, like I ended up mentioning earlier. I really stressed this earlier in the AMA. I wanted to be able to make sure that, for instance, if we had any skills that are luck-based, that increase your item drop rate or anything else like that, that we had to look at the impact that that made towards the emissions from the game to be able to make sure that we weren't emitting too many tokens, and how that impacted the entire ecosystem. Now, as far as classes and stuff like that,
Sorry, by professions, I didn't mean classes. I meant like the crafting professions. Sorry.
what do you mean crafting professions?
Like, I don't know if like mining or smithing or wood cutting, like, will there be professions like that kind?
No, so we're gonna have it to where everybody can be able to probably do that. And in terms of like wood cutting or mining or anything else like that. Right now we do not have it to where you can do any of those things in the very beginning. We're going to then enable the ability to be able to mine specific objects and stuff like that. So right now, when you come across a tree in a game, you can't cut it down. But when we get to the point where you can be able to do that, we're going to make it to where when you go to different dungeons, there will be things that you can be able to not only get from monster drops, but also get from the actual environment. So it will cover all of that. Because if we were to have it to where it's only specific based to a specific class, it would just be too hard. So every class is going to be able to do it. Are we going to give it levels? Like, oh, you're a level 1 miner, you're a level 2 miner, and stuff like that, to where you can only mine this specific thing if you are at this level, like RuneScape did? I don't think that's a good idea. Just because and the reason why is because you have to look at the programming side of it. So when you reincarnate your character and it resets all level 1, if we were to have levels, then we would have to be able to then create a divergence from the original level of your character when it reincarnates. So you'd have 2 level systems. So you would have the like mining, farming, etc. I mean, farming's probably, we might actually take that out of the game at the moment. But as far as mining goes and cutting down trees, we absolutely will have that in there. So that is kind of the answer to that, is that we'd have to be very kind of careful about how professions are done, but we're probably just going to have it to where if there is a specific thing in the actual game, like let's say that there was like some rare ore or something, we might make it to where, like, in order to be able to mine that, you might have to be able to have a specific type of item to be able to do that, and that would help us allow for you to be able to add like a leveling system without having to be able to add a leveling system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you could have it location based rather than just like leveling based. That makes sense. For the stat upgrades, like, so as you level up, you'll get, points that you can put into like strength or intelligence or whatever, is kind of what it sounded like. From the renter's perspective, like, will they be able to plug those points in, or like, because like obviously one concern would be like, you have a troll renter who's throwing all of your points into intelligence on like a fighter or strength on your mage, that kind of thing.
That's going to be a flag. It's going to be a checkbox. When it comes to renting, there's going to be so many things that you're going to have to really actually check off, because like, think about this versus like Axie Infinity or Pegasus or Crypto Cars. They're all 0 skill games. This is actually something that actually requires skill. You have to have somebody who actually can think and actually can be able to go and check out different dungeons and stuff like that. And what do they do when their inventory fills up, right? It's a lot, honestly. So we have to be able to create a renting system that is very, very complex. It's not simple. So right now we have it to where you can check off what level of item can be sold. So like, let's say that you have rare items, right? So you can be able to sell everything but the rare items of that specific class. So all the loot that they end up finding, they can sell, they can buy stuff with the DLC in the game. We don't have it to where there's a limit of what they can be able to buy in the game, so you can technically have a troll be able to go use all the DLC that they've earned and be able to just burn it, which would be dumb and it would suck. But again, we can't protect you from everything, just because, one, the burden of programming would be massive, and two, we do want to put some responsibility on the actual people who are renting, to make sure that who you're renting to is great. And for those of you that are going to use the marketplace, we have some controls in place to be able to protect you. But at the same time, if you really want to get the most out of being a renter, like renting out your actual dashers, I think that you should get the most benefit if you find your own people to be able to be your scholars. I honestly think that the more work you do, I mean, why shouldn't you be rewarded more? So I think that as a result will allow for you to be able to get a bigger return. It'll allow for you to be able to avoid some of the pitfalls of potentially renting to potential troll scholars on the actual marketplace, things of that nature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. For the DLC split that you're talking about, like if they went and if your renter went and spent all of the DLC that they have access to, and you were doing like a 50-50 split, they would only have access to that 50% anyways, right? Like the other 50 would go to a spot where they wouldn't be able to actually utilize it.
Yeah. So there would be a cap. So like let's say that they ended up earning, I don't know, 300 DLC for the character. What we might do is we might have it to where when it comes to the game, I mean, this is the thing that's really, really hard. So you have to be able to have DLC, right? That is used to be able to operate the game and play the game every single minute. You have to be able to go buy potions. You have to be able to go do this. And if we say that you only get 50%, right? You're essentially saying that person is having to spend their DLC to continue to be able to play the game to earn you DLC. Does that make sense? It's a weird setting. So no, we don't have it to where it caps out on your DLC. They can technically spend everything for that character that they have earned. And what we might do, and this is what we've talked about. We've talked about this because this has come up as a really hot button issue. We have it to where there's already a flag where they can't sell specific items. We have it to where they can't be able to invest your points unless you check a box. We have it to where they can't, what was the other thing that, they can't trade items unless you check a box. But what we do have is we came up with this idea for DLC management where at the end of every day, it would check off how much DLC has been earned, and then it would automatically subtract at the end of the day what that actual scholar has earned and automatically send their portion to them. And what was remaining was your portion. And as a result, what we're thinking of doing, and this is the solution that we ended up coming up with, is a lock percent, where you as the owner can set up a lock percent. So you can say, we're going to lock it and say that you can only ever spend 20%, like of whatever the DLC is of the total account. So let's say that the scholar ends up making 1,000 DLC for the day. Well, only 200 of that can ever be used, which completely cripples them if you really think about it, because then they might not be able to buy potions or whatever else it is. But then at the end of the day, once the day is done and the splits are to be split out, because you can't have it to where it's just constantly just, oh, they made 10 TLC, 2 goes over here, 8 goes over here. You just can't do that. So we have it to where at the end of the day, then whatever is left is then percentage split out. So we're really trying to be able to figure out how those percentage splits are going to work with DLC, because the more restrictions that we put in, the less fair and the less realistic it makes it to be able to continue possible gameplay. So it's just one of those really hard questions that we have to be able to really dial in. And I don't think we're going to get it right on the first get-go. And it might come down to doing a couple of different versions of it and then seeing what the community gives us feedback on. This is going to be one of the rolling features that we're going to have to really focus on with the community. It's not something that I think that we can predict on our end.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that sounds fair.
Awesome, guys. We are running on pretty much exactly 2 hours here. So I think it's a good spot to close it out. Really great questions, everybody. We enjoyed the opportunity to do this for you. Obviously, there's just so many nuances to the game, the structure, the development. Just, it's a lot easier to kind of just talk things out like this. So we're going to have the recording available in the AMA answers section. And yeah, think that's about all we got for you. With that, I'll just thank everybody for their time showing up and, of course, supporting the project. You know, there's some people in here that have been here from the very beginning, and that just means the world to us. So we're going to keep this train moving, we'll keep you all updated, and we'll get another one of these going soon.
Absolutely. And I just want to be able to say thank you to everybody who has supported the project. I mean, you guys do make it possible. I do apologize for all of the setbacks and everything else of just elongating the release time, but there are a lot of complicated factors that are on the back end that we're just trying to be able to iron out. And if we try to communicate all of the things that we're doing in the game mechanics side, it would be very, very long and it would take quite a bit of time. So now that we've gotten into a specific point where we won't have as many of those weird things like if this, if let's do that scenarios, I think that we'll be able to start sharing a lot of communication on what's being done and what new additions are being added. And you'll probably get a weekly digest of where things are at, where features are at, what new additions have been added, such as monsters, maps, etc. All of that's going to be very regular in terms of communication basis the very moment that the beta is out. So I just want to be able to communicate that. And again, thank you guys and just show some appreciation towards the amount of time that you guys have waited. And don't think that it goes unrecognized.
100%. All right, everybody. Thanks again for your time, your support. We're really enjoying getting this together, and fuck, it's just going to be great when the beta is finally out. We're all excited for it. We're really finally getting down to the wire here. So thanks, everybody, again, and we will be back soon with more.
Hell yeah. Take care.
Take it easy.
See you guys.
Thanks, Emirates.